Hi guys, so today I am doing a what I learned from being single video, and I don't think that's like a type of video people do, is it? But I think I mentioned doing a kind of series like this in a video a couple of months ago, kind of like a what I've learned from college, from being single, from being in a relationship, things like that. And today I thought I would do my what I learned from being single video. So I think that there's a lot you can learn from being in a relationship, but I think that the time that you have when you are by yourself is so useful and beneficial, and I know a lot of people who go from relationship to relationship, and I mean that might work for some people, but I do think that that time that you have to yourself, especially when you're an adult, is really important because you can learn so much about yourself, what you want out of life and your future, and just kind of who you are, what you may need to work on, what you want in someone in the future. It's just, there's a lot of benefits to being single, and I'm not saying, you know, being single is better than being in a relationship. I'm definitely not. Obviously being in a relationship is great as long as it's the right one. A lot of these things I did learn from a specific relationship, but I didn't figure it out or kind of reflect on it until I was single. And sometimes if you do jump from relationship to relationship without that time in the middle to be by yourself and think and reflect, you don't get that time to kind of assess any problems you might have, whether they're issues of like within yourself, whether it's confidence, self-esteem, or anything, or if it's an issue that you always have in a relationship, jealousy or anything like that. And I think that if you don't have that time to reflect, you won't appreciate every relationship. Although I've had some terrible relationships, I do kind of appreciate every one for what it taught me, and each one I've been in has given me something to bring into future relationships. This is a video about when I was single, what I reflected on, and how it really helped me. So although it is kind of about me and my personal experience, I do kind of hope it helps you and makes you appreciate the times when you're single. So let's get started. The first thing I learned from being single is just to not dwell on it. There are so many times where I've been single where I just thought, I just want a relationship, this sucks, I'm all alone, I'm lonely. And yeah, you will always have times where you kind of feel lonely and you do wish there was someone there and you had someone to share that with. But when you're single, instead of dwelling on the negatives of being single, which I'm sure like there are negatives, try to focus on the positives, you know, focus on that time you do get to yourself, because you don't always have that when you're dating someone. It's really important to have that time to yourself, all the reflecting you can do and like working on yourself. And I know it sounds so cheesy, but it's true. And whether it's watching Netflix or writing or reading or going exercising, whatever it is, having that time just for you to think, just for you, not worrying about someone else, can be super beneficial to you moving forward, whether you want to be in a relationship or not. It just teaches you a lot about yourself that you may not have been able to figure out when you were with someone, because so much of you is occupied by that. So not only will being single kind of help you to focus on what you want out of someone in the future, but it'll help you to focus on how you can compliment someone else and what kind of person you want who will compliment you the best. I mean, if you've been in dysfunctional relationships or your last relationship ended for a specific reason, you know, whether it was long distance, so now you know you don't want to deal with that again, or if it was trust issues and it was the other person that did something, or now you have your own trust issues or self-esteem or jealousy, whatever it was, you now have the time to reflect on that, whether you're venting to friends and family or a therapist or just writing it down or within yourself thinking about it. That time when you're single is when you can do that, because it tends to be when you're with someone, when you're in a relationship, when there's issues, you're focusing on their issues or on your issues as a couple, not as your own specific issues, which can lead to relationship issues. So I do think that that in-between time helps you figure out what it is that you want in the future. And that's kind of what I've done since I've been single for so long now. And I talked about it in my What I Look For a Guy video, although it's kind of a funny video. I did talk about like the importance of things to me, and being single has helped me realize that importance. One thing I've learned from being single, like more specifically, and I know this is going to sound really cliche, but is to work on my own confidence and self-esteem, because as much as I think, or I've thought in the past that, oh, I have plenty of confidence, when you're with someone, your confidence kind of builds off of what that person thinks of you and your relationship. And, you know, if the relationship isn't going well, or that person doesn't fill you with feeling good about yourself, you can feel bad about yourself. And I have come to realize that unless you can be happy within yourself, being single by yourself and knowing that that's okay, you're gonna always struggle with confidence when you're in a relationship. Once you find that confidence when you're single, you can get into a relationship that doesn't define you or own you, and it doesn't give you confidence, but just adds to what you already have. It should add to your life, not be your whole life. And if you can't find that confidence by yourself and you need that person to give it to you, then that relationship probably won't do as well, because your confidence is pulled only from what they think of you or how your relationship is doing, and that's not really great. Also, being single, I've learned that I have to focus on issues like trust, and in the past I've been too easy to trust, and then I've also been really difficult to trust and just like not at all letting that wall down. So by being single, I've been able to work on a balance with that, because if I had been with someone while I was working on that, not only would our relationship be strained, but I could really affect their trust issues. And if you have trust issues and you can't trust the other person, it's not going to work out, because trust is a two-way street and both people have to trust each other. Until you can work on that and realize that, I think being single is what you need. When I've had trust issues while I was dating someone, I immediately blame them and not myself and my own issues within myself that may come from past relationships or anything like that. And I find that that is something really easy to do when you're dating someone. You always blame them, and that is obviously normal, because you're angry in the moment, and later when you have the time to reflect, you can come to realize that maybe everything wasn't their fault, and it's kind of hard to admit that. But I think that the easiest way to admit that is when you're single and you have that time to focus and process everything that happened. I've also come to realize that I've been in relationships that 100% revolved around the other person, where I just, let everything in my life be swallowed up by that relationship, and I just wanted to spend all my free time with them. And you don't kind of realize it while it's happening when you let that relationship overwhelm you, because you just think, okay, well, I'm in this relationship, it's the most important thing to me, so that's what it is. But that's not good, because you're forgetting about yourself. You're not focusing on your needs and on what you need. You're putting all that, the other person's needs before yours, and your relationship's needs before yours. And unless you're okay on your own, separate from that relationship, the relationship can't be strong. It needs two strong people to make it work. So when I've been in those relationships before that fully revolve around the other person, I neglect things that are important to me, like my hobbies and things I want to do. And the time that I do enjoy being by myself. And I think that it is important to make sure you keep that life separate from your relationship. And I'm not saying have a double life or anything, but make sure you maintain your own personal individuality outside of your relationship. I'm not saying this because your relationship might fail, although it might. It's like, obviously that's something that could easily happen. But when you focus on the individuality, there's a lot more of an equal partnership in a relationship than one person being more invested than the other. You have to have your own friends and your own time, and I guess some people wouldn't agree with that, but if you are too codependent on the other person, that can be such a terrible impact on you. Not only can it cause resentment and can it cause extra pain if something were to happen, but when you're codependent on that relationship and on the other person, anything they do affects you so much more than it should, and that codependence can really cause a lot of resentment, and it can also cause you to feel very like a failure, unsuccessful. If that relationship doesn't work out and you were so codependent on them, then you feel like a failure, and everything that happens in that relationship reflects on you, at least within yourself. And so you do kind of have to keep that somewhat independence. I mean, I'm not a very independent person to begin with, but when going into a future relationship, I would know I can't constantly depend on this person, not thinking like, oh, they're not dependable, but thinking everything that I think of myself, my confidence and who I am can't be defined by who they are and how our relationship's doing. Because just because you have issues in your relationship doesn't mean you're a failure, doesn't mean you're a bad person. But if you are too codependent on that person and things aren't working out, that's how it can feel. By basing all of your success and your happiness on the other person and on that relationship, you can struggle with a lot of self-esteem if things don't work out, and you can feel rejected, and it's not like it's your fault necessarily, but because so much of you was invested in that and you didn't leave time for other things that were important to you, that's the only thing you had, and you feel like when that's gone, you have nothing, and that can lead to depression and a lot of serious issues. So from being single, I've learned that I can't let that happen again. And I think it sounds kind of negative and sad, but it's actually a positive thing. It would make me moving forward in a relationship knowing that I need someone who's going to be okay with that and realize that if I am spending too much time with them and neglecting things I want, that they'll understand I need to go back and do some things for me, and vice versa. I want someone who's not going to put all their energy into me and not, pay attention to other things that are important to them, their job, their hobbies, things like that. I think you do kind of have to have, whether you share those hobbies in your relationship or not, whatever, but you do kind of have to have other things that are important to you outside of the two of you, or else there's just too much pressure. Another thing that I noticed that I've done in relationships, especially once they're over, is that I put way too much effort into the relationship. I'm not saying that there's such thing as putting too much effort in, but when I get to the point where I know I like someone, I care about them, I don't want them to be out of my life, I kind of become blind to any of their faults or like anything that's wrong with them. And I know it sounds bad, and I'm not saying that, focus on all the negatives, and like if someone has one thing wrong with them, leave. Like, I'm not saying that at all, but I am saying that sometimes your emotions can blind you from real issues. And I think that that's something I have to be more aware of, is to, not overjudge someone or, take one little thing that's wrong and blow it out of proportion. But once I get involved to the point where I know I like this person, I can't be blind to things that might be a red flag. Being single has helped me realize that I need to find a balance in that. It comes with a lot of trust, and I think that that's, like I said, something I needed to work on, and I wouldn't have figured that out without the time I've had to be single. I also learned that I need to be with someone who's going to put the same amount of effort in that I am. I've been the person who puts in a lot of effort and just kind of ignores the fact that I'm with someone that might not put any effort in for me, and I don't even realize it. I don't even process that in my brain, that this person might not be in it for me, just for what I'm doing for them. And that's something I definitely need to look at moving forward, is to focus on someone who puts the effort in for me, but not an over amount of effort, and someone who I'm putting effort into, but not an over amount of effort. I've also learned that being single as long as I have, which is a very long time, I want to say like 3.5 years, ooh, that's a long time, but being single as long as I have been can put you in a rut, and it can kind of get you to just not even be lonely or just like boring, but it can make you feel like you just kind of forgot what dating feels like. Like at this point I've sort of forgotten the excitement and the fun of it. Being single for this long can definitely put you in that position of just not even being interested or not even realizing that dating is something out there. So I do think that being single, although it can put you in that position, if you can reflect on that and think, okay, well, I'm not going to give up, I'm not just going to forget how important a relationship can be. But with that, I've also learned that I can't be in a relationship just for being for the sake of being in a relationship, if that makes sense. I've definitely been to the point where I was so upset being single, or just like fed up with being single, that I, met someone and we liked each other and it was working, and we were happy, we did things, we got along, but something didn't feel right. I'm not saying that just because something doesn't feel right you should break up, but being in a relationship just because there's nothing wrong doesn't mean you should be in a relationship. I've definitely done that before, where once we broke up I realized, why was I trying so hard to make this work when it wasn't really the right person? I knew it all along, but because this person treated me right, and because they didn't, overtly go out of their way to like be cruel or mean, and there wasn't anything really wrong, but it didn't feel right. It wasn't the right person. And I'm not saying, you shouldn't just date around and have fun, but for someone like me, who at this point in my life, every single person I date is a potential person to be the person, I don't want to waste my time being in a relationship just for the sake of being in one. And that's how those kind of relationships end. And I think we've all kind of been there at one point or another, especially since I've had really bad relationships in the past. So when something comes along that doesn't seem wrong, it doesn't seem bad, it doesn't seem dysfunctional, but it's not right, you can feel it. And I think that a lot of people have that like sense of, I can feel if this is right or wrong. Just because I'm comfortable with this person and they're nice to me doesn't mean that they're the right person for me. Being single has definitely helped me to reflect on the fact that just because everything's fine doesn't mean that I'm supposed to be together with this person. And I'm not saying, because something doesn't feel right, that you should dump this person straight away, but talk to them, tell them, I'm really happy with you and things seem to be working, and I know there's not really anything wrong, but something just isn't right. And maybe you can work on it, and maybe that relationship is right and that person felt the same way because of some specific reason, and it can be fixed, but sometimes it can't. And by being honest and sharing that with them, I think that not only can you fix something that's wrong, but that way they know the truth, and they know that they didn't do anything and you didn't do anything, but there wasn't that feeling, it just wasn't right. And I think that leads me into my next point. Being single has showed me that honesty is always the best thing to do, and shutting your mouth and biting your tongue sometimes is the right thing when it's something small like that you're nagging them about, like picking up socks or little things. But when you have a really strong urge to say something and it's important and it's about a problem or anything, you need to share it. And I've definitely held back before just for the sake of not confronting issues and not having a conflict and, avoiding a fight. But sometimes a fight has to happen, and I'm not saying you have to fight and scream and throw things, but sometimes you have to discuss the hard things, and it is really easy just to avoid that and say, oh, you know what, we're just gonna have fun, I'm just gonna talk about it later, when the time comes. But if you keep waiting for the right time to talk about the more difficult things, it's just gonna bite you in the butt later on. And it's going to cause resentment, and it's going to cause a lot more problems than it fixes, than it avoids, I guess you could say it that way. But if you're dating someone they live far away and you just never talk about when you're going to move or what the situation's going to come from, or if you're dating someone and you're not sure if they're seeing other people, like, you need to have those hard conversations. I know it's difficult, I know it's awkward, and it's uncomfortable and just not great, but if you don't talk about them, that's going to cause problems later. And if you are more honest and you show the person that you trust them by sharing this stuff, they're going to feel that same way back, and they're going to trust you more and want to be more honest with you, and it can create such a stronger, more just better relationship. There's something in my eye. Obviously, if you have your own personal issues with trust or jealousy or clinginess, whatever it is, that is your own problem, and I'm not saying you shouldn't talk to them about it, like you should. But if it's becoming something that you're jealous of every single person that your partner works with or something, that is obviously within your own issue. But if it is an issue of your actual relationship, that you feel like you don't communicate enough, or you feel like they're not spending enough time with you, those are things that you have to bring up. You can't just hold those down and ignore them because it's easier not to talk about them, because the problem isn't going to go away just by ignoring it. Another thing that I've learned is not to put a breakup on hold, not to kind of ignore it or just think, okay, well, I'm not sure, so I'm just gonna wait on it, or oh, it's their birthday, oh, it's a holiday, I'm just gonna wait until those things pass by, because you are comfortable with this person. Usually when I notice that other people do this, and when I've done this and people have done this to me, people think, oh my god, you're so great, like, you are a good person, and we've had good times, I'm so comfortable with you, so I don't want to hurt you. And I think people do hold off on breakups for so many different reasons, whether it's comfort, because you're comfortable with this person, because you're scared of being alone, because you're scared of hurting them, because you're scared of the backlash, anything that you're afraid of. I think that putting a breakup on hold is one of the worst things you can do, not only for yourself, but for them. It builds up resentment in you, so by the time you do break up with them, it's more angry, and you can't give them as much of a reason because you've gotten so mad and fed up. And the other person now thinks that, okay, months have gone by and we're together, so we're good. And then you find out all of a sudden, spur of the moment, things aren't working out. So be honest, whether you know or not. If you're not sure if you want to break up with someone, talk to them, tell them why, what is this issue, whether it's something small or something big or just doesn't feel right to you. If you share that, it's much more likely going to be a positive outcome than if you hold it in, don't say anything for so long, and then finally blurt it out, because it's just going to hurt them more, it's going to hurt you more, and it's going to be a big explosion rather than a more calm agreement. And along with staying with someone just for the sake of staying with them, breaking up when it feels like you want to is really important, or talking about it. Don't just wait and wait and wait and wait. I've seen that happen so many times, and it just makes the situation so much worse than making it better. Another thing is, no matter how comfortable you are with the other person, no matter how happy they make you, or how close you've become and how much you've shared and how much they've been through with you, if there isn't trust there, if you don't trust them when it comes to the important parts, if you don't think they're going to be there for you if something happens, if you can't trust them and they cannot be there for you, it's never going to work ever. It's just not. Things aren't going to be good. Things aren't going to work out. And I know that it's terrible to say that, but I've seen so many people who fight all the time and just have so many problems. But when it matters, when those people need each other, they are there. They are there no matter what. That's what's important. But if you might be happy all the time and things are going great, but when it matters, the other person isn't there, it's not going to work. And that's something I've had to learn to figure out by being single, that I've looked back on relationships and thought, wow, we had such a good time, we laughed and we got along and we did this and we did that, but when it was important, when I really needed them, they weren't there for me, and that's not going to work. And vice versa, if you don't feel comfortable helping that person in their situations, or if they really need you and you don't feel like you can be there, there's a reason for that. So those are some of the things. I'm sure that there are plenty more that I've learned from being single, but my last kind of thing to leave you with is, even if all your friends are in relationships like mine are right now, it can be so much, it can almost be a blessing to be single sometimes. Being in a relationship obviously has its perks and it's amazing, especially when it's the right relationship, but being alone is always better than being in the wrong relationship or being in a dysfunctional, unhappy relationship. So when all your friends are dating and they seem happy and they're in relationships, don't feel like you're the oddball out. Just realize that you can get so much from this and make the most of being single, because it might not last that long. And you know, one day, I know a lot of people who are married or in long-term relationships and wish that they were single or wish that they had more single time, and not to go date around or hook up with a bunch of people, but to kind of focus on you and spend that time on you. So appreciate it when it's happening. Don't dwell on it. Don't think it's like the worst thing in the world, because it's not. One day you will miss that time that you have, whether you're in a happy relationship or not. No matter how bad or great you feel being single, when you're not meant to be single anymore, it'll happen. You'll be in a relationship when you're meant to be. But I do think that if you are single and you're not feeling great about it, just think about some of the things I said maybe. So let me know what you learned from being single, from times that you've been single in a comment. I'd love to know. Let me know if you want more of these things I've learned, videos from college, high school, having a job, I don't know, anything, let me know. And thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. I'd really, really appreciate it. And please subscribe if you haven't already to see more videos from me. And I will see you next time. Bye.